We have spent a lot of time recently talking about MCU murals, X-Men cartoons, and the new DCU. But that doesn't mean there's not a whole nother universe franchise thing going on, and they're doing their own weird stuff this week, so let's talk about them. As you know, next year, 2027, we will be getting Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2. This will be the second movie in what people are calling the Batman Epic Crime Saga. It will be the third entry if you count the Penguin series, which you should because at least as of now it seems to be in continuity, and I mean it's good, so you should count it. But even though this movie is apparently filming now, you can tell because Robert Pattinson was sporting the classic Bruce Wayne black hair during the Odyssey premiere, and I mean you could tell because they've said it, that they're making this movie now. And while we don't know very much about the plot of this movie, besides presumably it takes place after the events of The Penguin, which takes place after the events of The Batman Part 1, we do know a fair amount of the cast. And it has been this question of like, well, who are they playing? I made several videos speculating on certain characters that I think would fit based on what's going on in this universe, what the director has said about these characters, and like what Batman characters you would expect the actors to play. And they don't need to be villains, but it's a Batman movie. We're going to have at least one high-profile villain addition. And that's on top of Barry Keoghan getting a larger role in this movie. He's seen very briefly at the end of The Batman Part 1 and had a scene that was cut. But like, it seems like there'll be other stuff going on. Alright, so we've got 4 actors that have been floating around that are officially attached to this project. 1, Bucky Barnes, Sebastian Stan. 2, Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson. 3, Tywin Lannister, Charles Dance. And 4, Paperboy / I guess Phastos the Eternal, Brian Tyree Henry. And yes, I mostly just described those actors in respect to superhero or fantasy characters they've played. But like, this crew has Oscar nominations, they've worked on all kinds of prestige TV and movies. They're big gets, so you would expect they have meaty roles. And to be fair, anybody that's watching doesn't want to have things spoiled for them. Some of this stuff could very well be a spoiler. Right, like spoilers for a decade-year-old Batman game. But if you saw a news story that said Troy Baker is attached to Arkham Knight and is going to be providing the voice of Jason Todd, aka the Red Hood, that may not necessarily seem like a spoiler until they start advertising the game and realize, no, we're not supposed to know who this character is. But hey, sounds a lot like Troy Baker, and actually, if he was the Red Hood, that would make a lot of sense. However, I will say, I think there's a good chance a lot of this is revealed in the marketing. Like, you know this going into the movie the same way you knew that Paul Dano was playing the Riddler in the first one. Like, yes, we did know. And I'll also talk a little bit about how I think those characters could be adapted in this movie. So even if you go in knowing who Scarlett Johansson is playing, her character might not work the way she usually does in the comics for various reasons. So first, the rumors were that those first 3 actors were all playing members of the Dent family. Sebastian would play Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face. Scarlett would play Gilda Dent, Harvey's wife, and then Charles would play Harvey's father. I feel like we were less sold on the Charles part of that rumor, but the Harvey Dent rumor was going around everywhere. Then things changed, we got a new rumor, and it was that Sebastian Stan is playing a character called Victor Zsasz, and Brian Tyree Henry is going to be Harvey Dent. And, obviously none of this has been confirmed. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But a new rumor that more or less backs up what John Rocha and Jeff Snyder talked about earlier this week would suggest that indeed Brian Tyree Henry is playing Harvey Dent, although it's unclear if he is Two-Face at this point or not. Sebastian Stan is playing Victor Zsasz, which does kind of make sense outside of the Chris Messina version of this character who showed up in Birds of Prey or The Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. I think that's what that was called. But like, outside of that not insanely memorable performance, we have not had a Victor Zsasz in a big Batman movie yet. And partially that's because Victor Zsasz is not the most interesting character of all time. In the first Batman Arkham games, he's a tutorial. There's not much to him. He's a serial killer who uses knives and carves one tally mark onto his body for every victim. Now, this is interesting, I didn't know this. Besides him appearing on Gotham, played by the new DCU's Anthony Carrigan, but also, and I didn't know this, apparently this guy in Batman Begins, played by Tim Booth here, is supposed to be Victor Zsasz. I have seen Batman Begins like a million times. It was one of my favorite movies growing up. I had no idea this was a thing. Kind of like how my other favorite superhero movie was X-Men, and I didn't know until very recently that this character in X-Men 1 is supposed to be mutating villain Henry Gyrich. But anyway, real quick on Victor Zsasz. He is a serial killer. He is one of Batman's most serial killers, created in the 90s. He's smart, he used to be a rich guy, lost all his money, now he thinks life is meaningless, and he kills people so he can free them from this pointless existence. Interestingly enough, very early in his comic career, Zsasz was very involved with the Arkhams, the Gotham family who created Arkham Asylum, and specifically in the movie universe, Batman's mom is also an Arkham. So maybe there's something there. But then the new thing from the subreddit. And again, I will say, this could be a spoiler. I don't think they're going to do this good of a job of keeping this secret for more than a year. I just don't think they can do it if this is the case. Apparently, Scarlett Johansson is playing a version of Poison Ivy. Now, I know what you're thinking. If you're like me, you're thinking, hold on a second. Number one, Matt Reeves said we've never seen this villain before. Which is like, yeah, maybe that just means we've never seen this version of this villain before. But more importantly, Poison Ivy is one of Batman's metahuman villains. It's one of the really interesting things about Batman's rogues gallery. Some of them are just weird guys, and some of them are superhuman monster guys. But more importantly, one of the defining principles of the Matt Reeves Batman epic crime saga cinematic universe is that it's relatively grounded. It doesn't really get into the monstery villains, so we don't expect to see someone like, say, Man-Bat, who's a human man who can turn into a giant bat guy. Or Mr. Freeze, a guy that invents a freezing gun. Now, I'm sure there's ways we could work those characters into the stories, but this universe is way more conducive to characters we have already seen. The Riddler, the Joker, Catwoman, Penguin, Carmine Falcone, Salvador Maroni, Sofia Gigante, Magpie. Like, that's what this universe works with, and Victor Zsasz fits perfectly into that group. Two-Face, well, a little far-fetched with this whole acid gave him split personalities thing. Otherwise, though, like, a guy having two personalities and doing crimes and being a lawyer, none of that is that out there. I wouldn't consider that a science fiction premise. But Poison Ivy really is like one of the highest profile science fiction Batman villains. She's a person who can control and talk to plants. I would say she's right up there with Clayface, Man-Bat, Killer Croc, Mr. Freeze, like comic Bane. You get the picture. So if this is true, this is a strange casting decision. In the usual Poison Ivy origin story, she is a botanist who gets exposed to chemicals by the Floronic Man, and she gets the ability to talk to plants, control plants, to spontaneously grow and move around plants. She can control the minds of people using spores. Her body can create a poison that she can use on people. She could even sometimes create an army of, like, zombie plant guys. I mean, she's got green skin. Like, she's a metahuman. And debatably, like, one of the more powerful of Batman's villains. Like, she's one of a few Batman villains where I could be like, she could pretty much be anybody's villain. She could be a Flash villain. She could be a Wonder Woman villain. She could fight Superman. She has in the past. Usually she mind controls him, but still, like, she's almost too good for Batman. One of the most interesting things about her is originally she was a villain. And she still is a villain. But she's moved on to being a way more sympathetic eco-terrorist figure, although that was always kind of part of her character. And that seems to be what Matt Reeves likes about this character. Because the rumor says that this version of Poison Ivy is just going to be a person, a botanist, maybe a florist, who likes plants, and uses plants to poison people. Secretly. Who is she poisoning? Well, that's the other interesting part of the story. So apparently one of the people she's after is Charles Dance, who plays a high society Gotham type with ties to a secret organization. A lot of people think that means we're talking about the Court of Owls here, which is a secret society of owl-themed aristocrats, an Illuminati sort of thing that works behind the scenes to run Gotham. Charles Dance could fit in well as any member of the court. So like in this story, Charles Dance is a member of the Court of Owls, and he's also something else, like maybe he's part of the Arkham family. In different stories, the Kanes have been involved with the Court of Owls. In the Gotham Knights video game, Jacob Kane, Bruce's uncle, was a member of the Court of Owls. So like maybe he's playing that character, but in this situation would be Jacob Arkham. But either way, that might be the plot of this movie. ScarJo as Poison Ivy is killing members of the Court of Owls, leading her eventually to Charles Dance, and Victor Zsasz is somehow involved. And I think the idea that Brian Tyree Henry is Harvey Dent, that seems to work in any version of this story. But I do want to talk about what is my one issue with this story, and what has always been my issue with Court of Owls stories in this universe. You can describe this movie now. If you take out all the proper nouns, what this turns out to be is a Batman story where Batman is trying to find someone who is killing high-profile rich people that are part of an evil conspiracy, who originally thinks it's connected to one classic Batman comics villain, but eventually you find out it's connected to a different classic Batman comics villain. So yeah, like, that's the plot of The Batman Part 1. There was a conspiracy by the mob, the police, the politicians, to control Gotham. The Riddler wants to expose it, that gets other characters like Penguin and Catwoman involved, and the Riddler, this character who is frequently framed as like a kooky guy who uses riddles and puzzles, is set up as more of a sympathetic figure until the end of the movie, but someone who sees this evil in society and has decided it's his job to fix it. It doesn't make him a good guy, but that's not the same as the big giant crocodile man. This is a little bit more sympathetic version of this character. Jigsaw meets Luigi Mangione, if you will. But while I think there are obviously some differences here, the inclusion of Harvey Dent is interesting. Seeing Sebastian Stan play a serial killer, something he seems to be working up to after Fresh. And Scarlett Johansson, Charles Dance, actors I like, but it does seem a little weird that the second movie in this universe is kind of just the first movie again. Especially because in the first movie, Batman exposes the criminal plot at the heart of Gotham. And it is a very realistic web of corruption, and the Riddler didn't seem to notice this at all in all the hacking and stuff he was doing. There's another even more evil, even more secret Illuminati. And while I think that could be compelling, and I trust Matt Reeves, because I love what Matt Reeves has done so far. His Planet of the Apes movies are great. The Batman Part 1 was great, but it just feels strange that they took all this time to write a new Batman story because they wanted to get this movie exactly right, and they ended up with another story about a terrorist taking down a secret organization within Gotham. And that's not to say the movie can't be good, and that's not to say that's definitely what this is. That is kind of what the leaker was describing. However, one of the things the leaker said is that names are not used on sets. There's a lot of code names to make it hard for people like them to leak. This could also just be a fake leak. This could be a decoy. I think that'd be cool. I think that'd be interesting. But I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to find out what this is soon. This movie is currently filming. And I imagine, the original movie, they're going to try to use some real locations. Maybe they'll show a costume or something. So we'll know whether this is true soon. But I don't know. While this seems like something that could plausibly work in the universe Reeves has created, it might just be too familiar. It's hard to say. Now, there is the option that while this character is doing things Poison Ivy would do, and maybe she will be nicknamed by the press or the police Poison Ivy, maybe it is a different character. Maybe it is Gilda Dent. Maybe it's Andrea Beaumont, the Phantasm. But in this, the twist is the Phantasm is actually Poison Ivy. That's an option. And then you get this romance with Bruce where someone that matters in Bruce's life comes back. He tries to use this opportunity to maybe stop being Batman. This is a classic Batman tale. And it's all filled with lots of romance and intrigue. And if you like things like that, you should check out this new video I watched by Lindsay Ellis called Time to Pivot to Romantasy, I guess. In it, Lindsay talks about the romantasy genre, which I was fascinated by. I've been hearing about it for years, never really knew what it was. And I think Lindsay's perspective on it as an author who writes about something that's kind of similar is really interesting. I would say it's definitely worth a watch, whether you are a big fan of romantasy or, like me, someone who has heard about it a lot but doesn't really know what it is. And you can find that video along with tons of other videos on this video's sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is a subscription streaming platform that I and a bunch of other YouTubers you probably already love helped to create. First thing that's important, all of our videos go up there early and ad-free. So if you want to be the first person to see one of my Nando V movies or Nando Cut videos, Nebula is for you. And then there are series like Jetlag or Tom Scott's England, where they go up on Nebula a week before they go anywhere else. Then we also have Nebula exclusive series of videos, like Tom Nicholas has a series called Slow News Day. Captain Midnight has a series called Showrunners, where he looks at different people that have created television shows. The first episode is about Rod Serling in The Twilight Zone. The second episode is about Vince Gilligan in Breaking Bad. Looks at the journey of how they got to where they were and how that shaped the series they would showrun. And then Curious Archives Gods and Monsters series looks at these different legendary creatures from religion and mythology and talks about how the ideas of those creatures has evolved over time and they've turned into pop culture characters. So you can find all that great stuff exclusively on Nebula. And a year of Nebula is already a steal at $60 a year. That is $5 a month. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get Nebula for just $2.50 a month. That is $30 for the year. It's an awesome deal. Go check it out. I guarantee there is a creator you already love who's part of Nebula. And if you spend some time on Nebula, I bet you'll find your new favorite creator. After me, of course. Your second favorite creator because I'm your favorite. Don't correct me. Again, that is go.nebula.tv/thenandocut. But, this is a new rumor. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an announcement in the near future, because this is going to come out one way or the other. So we'll cover that when that happens. Until then, stay safe. I'll see you guys around.